The Cherokees saw what happened to the Creeks, and they didn't want to share the same fate. They thought that if they learned to live like the whites, they could live peacefully alongside them. They believed that if they accepted white culture, they could live in Georgia, on the land of their mothers and fathers, forever.
This is a very significant site in that this was the capital of the Cherokee Nation. Just like Washington, D.C. is our capital, this was the capital of the Cherokee Nation.
This is New Echota. It's a state historic site now, but back in the 1820s and 30s, this was the capital of the Cherokee Nation. Frankie Mewborn, who is superintendent of the site, explains.
Pretty much by 1890, the whole town was gone. So using your imagination, you have to kind of piece it back together. There were 60 to 70 people that lived here year-round, 30 or 40 different buildings, and there were like town streets laid out.
It was a town much like any other in northwest Georgia at that time. There was a combination hotel, tavern, and general store, and there were homes where the Cherokees lived about the same as white settlers did.
Now this building that we're coming up to now is it's an 1830 structure, and it's to show people how a middle-class Cherokee family would have lived. By the 1830s, they were living in log cabins just like this one here. So this gives you a good idea as to how not just the Cherokees, but how the settlers were living as well. So this was kind of like a parallel culture.
The Cherokees were living in almost every way like the settlers, using beds and fireplaces and looms to make cloth. They even set their tables the same.
Between the two, and you see that's a piece of china. It's called a blue feather edge china, and that was imported from England, this piece right here. Okay, this was made in a factory. This was very, very common. That's a lot like our everyday china.
There were even wealthy plantation owners like James Vann, who built large, comfortable homes. They led the Cherokees in adopting a lifestyle parallel to white culture. The Cherokees were the first Native Americans to have a written language, created by a gifted artist named Sequoyah. An impressive number of Cherokees could read and write, and there was a print shop at New Echota that printed a newspaper called The Phoenix, printed in English and Cherokee. It was in The Phoenix that the Cherokees printed their Constitution. That document created an entirely new system of government.
This building here, this is the Supreme Court, and it's a model of what the original building would have looked like. Now, the Supreme Court would have met here in the fall of the year, okay? In the downstairs part of the building, this is where they held their court meetings. Now, in the Supreme Court, there were 3 judges that sat on the panel. It wasn't a jury.
It sounds a lot like our government today.
As a matter of fact, the Cherokees had adopted the European style of governing, and they had written their constitution that was basically patterned after the United States Constitution.
Why did the Cherokees change their form of government?
Hopefully they could get along with everyone in the changing times, and hopefully that they would be able to retain their government and their tribe here in Georgia. By being the same, perhaps they would not be removed. To me, that is the tragedy of the whole story.
The tragedy is that all the settlers really wanted from the Cherokees was their land, which covered the entire northwest corner of Georgia. They wanted it for farms and for gold. In 1829, this man, Benjamin Parks, found gold on Cherokee land near Dahlonega. Overnight, there was a rush of people to the mountains of Georgia, all of them hoping to strike it rich. It was the end of hope for the Cherokee. To force the Cherokees to leave, the state legislature enacted a series of unjust laws. It became illegal for Cherokees to dig gold on their own land. They could not testify against white men in court. The Cherokee Council was forbidden to assemble. The state even divided up Cherokee land and sold it in a lottery. This is one of the original lottery tickets, showing the piece of land that some settler won at the expense of a Cherokee family. Finally, the Cherokees were forced to sign a treaty, giving up their land in Georgia.
The Treaty of New Echota was signed here in 1835. That treaty pretty much sealed the fate of the Cherokee Nation, and that resulted in the forced removal of the Cherokee, or what we would call the Trail of Tears.
John Ridge, a Cherokee leader, spoke against removal.
You asked us to throw off the hunter and warrior state. We did so. You asked us to form a Republican government. We did so, adopting your own as a model. You asked us to cultivate the earth. We did so. You asked us to learn to read. We did so.
But it wasn't enough. In spite of the Cherokees' success in adopting white culture, in the end, they were banished from Georgia.